The UCI are going to ban narrow handlebars. Well, they're clearly not.
Well, that aged badly. Hey, what's going on? Atiba here, and today we are going to be talking about the new UCI rules. So the UCI have announced their set of rules that they're going to implement in 2026 for the road and 2027 for the track. I am going to talk about some of the rules and give out some of my opinions. So let's get started. So I'm going to be talking about the rules, in my opinion, that start from the least impactful to the most impactful. So for road, which is the 1st of January 2026, and for track, which is the 1st of January 2027, forks cannot be wider than 115mm and rear seat stays cannot be wider than 145mm. And this is measured internally. I don't think this will affect many individuals, as these bikes or these bike frames tend to be quite new, so less people tend to have them. The people that are going to be affected are businesses who have recently been developing new bikes and the UCI have approved these frames, and then a few days later they've done a U-turn and now their bikes are illegal. And this will also affect people who own bikes like the Hope Lotus, and interestingly enough I know 2 people that own that bike and their bike's going to be banned in 1.5 years. This will also affect national teams, although a lot of these teams are sponsored, so it won't be that much of a heavy hitter compared to individuals that own the product themselves. Next rule, I wasn't sure if this rule or the other rule was worse, but I'd probably say they're just as bad as each other. This rule is going to come into place next year, and there is a maximum rim depth. So the maximum rim depth is 65mm. At the time when they announced this rule, I was just like, not a big deal. However, thinking about it now, if you do need to make your bike heavier, as it may be under the UCI weight limit of 6.9 kilograms, you might have to go back to the days where people used lead, so that might be a little bit of a disadvantage. Next rule is for the road. This rule is regarding TT helmets. So at the moment, there is no difference between a road helmet and a TT helmet. And a lot of people didn't realise that you could actually ride a TT helmet in a mass start event. So starting from next year, TT helmets are banned, and there's going to be a strict differentiation between road helmets and TT helmets. I'm not sure on what classification they're going to define a road bike helmet and a TT helmet, but only time could tell. The next rule is very, very new, and it's actually going to be trialling from August this year. So there is going to be a maximum gear limit. So the gear limit is 5411. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the maximum gear you can run is 54 at the front and 11 at the back. So anyone that has a SRAM group set will not be able to run that 54 tooth. Anyone running that SRAM group set will not be able to run that 54 tooth. I've also heard that some teams will just limit the sprocket going down to 10 tooth. So essentially they'll be running an 11-speed group set. What's my opinions on this? Well, the reason that they want to do this is to slow down the peloton in the act of safety. They're still going to go pretty fast down alpine ascents, and this is probably going to disadvantage people who can't pedal faster, which they're just probably going to do. They're going to learn how to pedal faster. But that wasn't the main reason why people were running bigger and bigger chainrings. So there is a benefit of running a bigger chainring to have your chain line as straight as possible, as you'll be running through the middle of the block instead of lower down on the block of the cassette. The next rule, which has triggered me and many other people, is the handlebar width. So a lot of people were confused when they implemented a minimum handlebar width rule. So I'm going to explain it to you properly, because no one seemed to understand it before. So currently on the road, time trials and time trials on track, which include individual pursuit and kilometre time trial, the minimum width that you can run your handlebars is 35 centimetres outside to outside, which essentially in most cases are 33 centimeters center to center, which is how most brands measure their handlebars. This was at the widest point, and there's also a minimum angle that you have your handlebars. So if your handlebars were not flared and they were pretty straight, then it would be 10 degrees of inward tilt. If your bars are flared, then you could basically match your handlebars. So essentially you have them a lot more narrower compared to a straight fitting set of drop bars. On the track, currently there are no rules on bar width. So basically you could run as narrow of bar as you like. But starting from 2026 for the road, there is a new minimum bar width. So instead of it being 35 centimeters outside to outside at the widest point, it is now 40 centimeters outside to outside. And now the shifter hoods could only be 32 centimeters inside to inside, measuring from the top of the hoods. What does that mean? Well, anyone running narrow bars, like me, may have to consider going for something wider, which is going to discriminate a lot of people. And I'm not going to say it's going to just discriminate small people and women, because that's not necessarily how handlebar width works. It's about how narrow someone is. So if you have someone that's 6'2" and is particularly narrow, they're going to be affected. So anyone that is reasonably narrow is going to be affected, which is a lot of people. But the reason why they're doing this is to slow down the peloton, because apparently narrow bars are dangerous. But personally, I think it's more of a skill issue if anyone's crashing with a pair of narrow handlebars.
To anyone that says my bars are too narrow, they're dangerous, it's just a skill issue.
But come to think of it, if someone is narrow, are they running a pair of narrow handlebars? Anyway, this has triggered a lot of people. Triggered a lot of people enough for a petition that is online to stop the UCI making this rule. If you think this is an issue, I'll put a link below so you can sign it. So who is this going to affect? Because obviously there are a few people who don't race that are watching this video and they're thinking, well, I don't race, this is not going to affect me. Well, you're wrong. So the reason why it will affect you is because if you want a new pair of narrow handlebars, it's going to be harder to get because these brands aren't going to make them. And a lot of commercially available stuff is UCI approved equipment. Think about that when this rule comes into place. I also forgot to mention in 2027 for track cycling there's going to be a minimum bar width which is 35 centimeters outside to outside, like the old rules.
Hey, quick one again. Talking about the track handlebar rules, the UCI state that this applies to mass start events. So what will be defined as a mass start event? Well, according to ChatGPT, this would include bunch races like scratch race, the elimination, the points race. And sprint race it won't because it's 2 people, but in some cases it's 3 people in UCI events. But Keirin is a bit of a grey area, so is the UCI going to apply this handlebar rule to Keirin racing and not sprint, or is Keirin not classed as a mass start event? Of course, if it's something like Pursuit or Kilo, that's not a mass start event as it is a time trial. Same with team events like Team Sprint and Team Pursuit. So only time will tell, and let's see what the UCI put in their full documentation when the rules come into place in 2027 for the track.
Which means that there are a few people who are running bars narrower than 33 centre to centre, which that is what the current rules are for road. So you have 1.5 years to change your handlebars. I don't think this is really going to affect as many people, especially the narrower individuals, but the ones that are into aero may be a bit sad. Backtracking on to what I was saying about who it affects people who don't race because it's going to be harder to get the equipment. It's going to affect the businesses that have made these products and now they've been backtracked on. It's going to affect the World Tour teams, although I don't think it will affect them that much in terms of getting the equipment. But for these riders that are perfectly comfortable on a set of handlebars that actually fit them, they're going to be affected. It's going to affect the privateer racers that race UCI events because they're going to have to buy their own equipment. And of course the smaller continental teams, which they will have sponsorship. Some do have sponsorship and they'll just get new kit, but there might be smaller teams where they might actually have to pay for new kit, so that's going to affect their budget. And also, it's going to potentially affect people at local races. I can't speak for every single cycling body, but there's a good chance that British cycling may not ban narrow handlebars. But never say never, because a lot of these cycling bodies will shadow rules of the UCI.
So just to clear some things, British Cycling has said that they're not going to enforce the narrow handlebar rule, courtesy of Tim Allen, and the same with Cycling USA, or is it USA Cycling? Yeah, back to the video.
However, as I recall, disc brakes weren't banned in BC races.
Oh yeah, disc brakes, they were banned briefly, I think 2016, and then in 2018 they were allowed because of the emerging sales of disc brakes on road bikes, so the more you know.
But number pockets aren't banned through BC races, and they are banned through the UCI. But saying that, every commissaire will be different race to race. There are some commissaires during BC races which are measuring hood angle for safety. And that was my video on the new UCI rules. If you like the video, give me a like below. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe. I'm out. Peace.